Okay, if everybody wants to settle in, I think we're ready to get started. Okay, we're running a few minutes late. We'll try to catch up. If not, just blame the Education Committee. But before we get started, I'd like to first take a moment of silence for the loss of Christine McLean with Stair Flight at the end of April. So if we could just take a moment of silence and remember her and her contribution to our industry and especially to the care of patients that she's provided. Okay. As you can see, Dudley's not here. Not a figment of your imagination. He is not here. Oh, I've got to get my cell phone out though, because he did tell me that he would send messages to me along the way if apparently I missed something. So he's watching. So Dudley, I have my phone. I'm ready for if I missed something. Okay. So we're going to start off with looking at the Comprehensive Clinical Management Program. This is something that's been in the state rules for a while, but I think, Joe, you said no one is actually using it right now?
Sure. So as we were looking at the new rules, we're going to remove it since it's not been used. But since our committee meeting, there's now two organizations that popped up and said, hey, I think we want to use that. So I don't know. My guess right now, we just leave it there. It hasn't been used in the past, but there's a possibility it's going to be used in the future. So I think we put it back in and just forget we had that conversation.
Okay, yeah. Well, for those who are wondering what the heck are they talking about, this is a program that allows EMS provider service to basically be responsible for providing CE and recertifying their personnel. It's another option to the way that paramedics recertify. But it's never been used. I actually, I'll be honest, just recently read through it, and it's quite complicated. And I'm even wondering for those who are interested, because it says that you have to have a CCMP organization come do the survey, which do any even exist?
You know, there's a lot of talking around that.
So we're going to have to see.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just think, when we first started doing the rules, there was no interest at all, so we thought we'd just pull it out, because that's one of the missions of rules, is that when you're not using them anymore or not using them at all, get rid of them. Why have them sitting out?
Well, it's kind of like kids. They don't play with the toy until you try to take it away, and then they want the toy. Yes?
Hi, I'm Alan Johnson. I was one of the early architects of that program back almost 10 years ago now. Kevin Veal, myself, Kelly Curry, and Leanne Bedrich, a handful of others were tasked with drafting that document. We got to the point where we did 3 beta tests of it. We had 3 agencies that, 2 of which I would say successfully passed it. One was very close and would need a little bit of remediation, but would have been able to get there. It was modeled after the trauma designation program. In fact, we took their documents and modified them. We were assigned Kim Petty at the time, along with Steve Yonda, to help us get the program drafted, beta tested, and so forth. And then along came Senate Bill 2292, which gutted DSHS's personnel at that point, and the program went into dormancy. The program could operate as that 5th level of certification, but my contention always was that was not the reason to do it. It was the carrot to get people to do it. But the real purpose from this was to resource agencies in developing clinical quality processes that met the needs of the healthcare industry. When it went into dormancy, when I left Montgomery County, I went to HCA. We obviously contracted with a number of private providers to do non-emergency and emergency transfers out of our facilities. Some of our sickest patients in the hospital ended up in the back of an ambulance And we had an obligation as a healthcare provider to ensure that they knew what they were doing, and they had processes behind the scenes to ensure their personnel were qualified to take care of our patients. And so with the permission of DSHS, we dusted that program off, and we implemented it with all of our vendors to, in some cases, give them the gold seal of approval, but in many cases to help coach them along into building better clinical processes to ensure that their organizations were clinically well run. So TTAF was a logical place to be able to move CCMP. I think there would be agencies out there, if you went out today and promoted the program and said, we're going to make this available, whether you're going to put a carrot behind it or just simply allow agencies to go through it like they would through CAS or in the air medical industry CAMES and be able to put that seal of approval on their ambulances, I believe you would have agencies that would be willing to do it. And I know you have people in this state who have the quality background necessary to go out and help measure this. It would require a year to 18 months of doing some beta testing to refresh the program, to develop the tools to do those surveys. But I think you'd be doing the industry a great service if DSHS would pick this back up again and put it out there and move at some point in time to having that be the standard that EMS agencies follow. In the previous meeting, when the talk was, well, do we need to carve out some hours from CE for stroke? No, you should. What you should do is empower and demand of the medical directors to measure the quality of their programs. And if they have an issue diagnosing stroke, if they need to bring about better stroke education, then do it. If they're nailing it and they're strong in that, then they need to be focusing their efforts elsewhere. CMP would give them the latitude to do that. So I'm done. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
No, that was exactly my thought when as you're talking about, the importance of it was the discussion with the stroke and how this would fall right into line with that.
And the program actually has a number of different modules. It starts off with the initial screening and assessment of applicants. It looks at how do you determine who you should hire. Once you hire them, how do you credential them? What does that preceptor program look like? Your protocol development, management, and measurement. How do you do your CE? How do you measuring quality within the program? And what is the medical director's role across that span of clinical processes? So even if you never wanted to be CCMP approved, if you took that manual and used that as the basis for building out your quality program, you would be light years ahead of most areas. So I'd be anytime happy to talk more about it or answer any questions about the history of the program.
Like I said, I admit I did just recently read it, but I do commend the work y'all did because it is very nice document with I agree with you. Even if you don't go for it, it's certainly a great tool to use just to improve your system as a whole. I mean, it's very impressive. Anybody have any other? I guess then since we have two agencies now that have popped up and looking at it, we'll just.
My guess is it'll stay in place.
Okay, we'll go with that. Okay, next agenda item, EMS committee meetings, gathering stakeholder input on the rules, chapter 157. We did meet March 5th and April 1st here in Austin to kind of go over the revisions, picked up where we had left off last November, and made a number of those that they're now working on. And of course, the next topic will be when do we do the road trip, which really the next two agenda items kind of fall together because kind of need to jump up real quick and kind of see where we are on the revisions before we can kind of see when we want a road trip. So
sure. So my plan is hopefully to have the revisions done by middle of June at the latest. I know Phil's done a lot of work on 11 and one other one. So we've made a lot of progress since all the input from the committee meetings. We'll get that out, and then I would say that will be our first draft that we're going to start circulating out and start getting input, and then start having stakeholder meetings. I guess over the summer, early fall, something like that.
Yeah, I did talk to Dudley last night. He said he would like to see us probably start the road trips about mid-September. To get past the summer, past hurricane season, past family vacations and all of that. So probably about mid-September. I think he said, Justin, you have a map of where we've all been?
Yes.
where we've been so far?
Yes.
Oh. I thought it was something we could put up. Okay.
Email it to you.
Can everybody see that?
Ozona.
Ozona. Okay. We tried to hit all the different areas of the state when we've done these kind of road trips to get input from all the stakeholders. We've done this a couple different times, actually. So one of the couple questions we need to have is how many different meetings do we really think that we need to have? And then kind of what location should we look at going to? So let's start off with how many. How any thoughts on how many stops we need to make?
So if you're not going to do it till September, we have a meeting in August. So by then, all the drafts will be out. You'll get a chance to review them, get a sense on how painful it will be or not. You've seen it already. There's no surprises to you. They're just cleaned up now. And it might be easier to plan a fall road trip after you see all the documents.
Yeah.
And the plan would be is that we'll put it up on our website, let's say next 30 days, so people will start seeing this stuff and start having some dialogue, so that when we go through the formal approval process, we come to some kind of an agreement long before we get into the formal process.
Okay. We'll kind of wait then until August to kind of look and make those more specific decisions. I would really encourage everybody, though, when the documents do come out, read through them, because it did make it a little harder when we had the meetings here in Austin to try to both read them and discuss them at the same time. So
Can't read them to you.
yeah. So once they come out, I know time is limited and everybody has a lot of requirements on their time, but try to really read through those and kind of know if there's something you have an issue with, something you really want to make sure does stay in there, then you can come to these stakeholder meetings and kind of be prepared, and hopefully we can have some really good quality dialogue then on the revisions that are proposed.
And Tammy, as I travel around Texas, if I'm going to meetings places, I'm suggesting to the RACs, or I'm suggesting to whoever's having this meeting, let's have a nighttime meeting, just talk about the rules. So it may not be through this committee, it just may be general meetings, because it seems senseless to me to go someplace and just sit in a hotel at night if I can have an opportunity to get some input from the providers and from the personnel.
You're so diligent. Okay. Well, good. Then that brings us to Sam Vance. I promised him I'd make sure we got to him.
Thank you. So while I get this set up here, good morning, I'm Sam Vance. I'm the EMS for Children Program Manager. And just to remind you, next week is EMS Week. Wednesday of EMS Week is always EMS for Children Day. We will be up in Amarillo doing the Panhandle Pediatric Conference on Wednesday, May 20th, so if y'all can make it, come on up. Also, we have our annual EMS for Children Crew of the Year Award that we do. Try and do that during EMS Week. This year's recipient is the Cy-Fair Volunteer Fire Department, along with members of the Memorial Hermann Life Flight and members of the Harris County Sheriff's Department. And we'll be presenting that award to them on Friday, May 22nd at Lone Star College in Cypress. So today I just want to present to you the results from the EMS for Children 2013-14 National EMS Reassessment. If you remember back in 2010 and 11, the Health Resources Services Administration, HRSA, along with the National EMS for Children program, did an assessment of all of our EMS agencies nationwide to determine how well we are meeting the performance measures of online medical direction, offline medical direction for pediatrics, and folks carrying essential pediatric equipment and supplies. And so this reassessment was to determine if we're doing any better, any worse, or have stayed the same. During this reassessment, we had 48 states participate, including the District of Columbia and 5 U.S. territories. Nationally, we had over 8,000 EMS agencies participate in the survey or the assessment for a nationwide response rate of 81%. Here in Texas, we have so many EMS agencies, they allowed us to do a random sampling assessment. So we submitted the names of 1,067 EMS and first responder organizations to the National EMS for Children Data Analysis Resource Center, who helped conduct the assessment. And their computer randomly chose 459 agencies to assess. Out of those, 326 responded for a response rate of 71%. There was only one other state that assessed more services than we did, and that was Virginia, and they assessed 498 departments. So this map here represents the number of ALS units from the agencies that responded, from the ALS agencies, and as you can see, we received a pretty good sampling that's pretty representative of the entire state. So performance measure 71, online medical direction, that pertains to those who attempted to contact online medical direction when treating a pediatric patient defined as 0 to 18 years by their assessment, and how often was medical direction available to provide advice to your providers. As you can see by this, we are just slightly below the national average on our online medical direction. But for me personally, I think what's more important is to look at our comparison data of 2011 to 2014. Our BLS agencies, you can see those that have online medical direction from 2011 at 71.5% has gone up to almost 89%, so that's good. And as far as our ALS agencies are concerned, we have gone up from 81% to 86% of our agencies that have online medical direction for pediatric patients available now. This question pertained to performance measure 72, which pertains to offline medical direction, which is our written protocols available to your providers for the treatment of pediatric patients ages 0 to 18, and how often are these protocols physically available in the vehicle or are carried by your providers during an emergency call. So you can see that we are either at or above the national average in agencies that have adopted pediatric protocols and those that have them available when actually treating a patient. And as far as the comparison data from 2011 to 14, you can see that our BLS agencies have gone from 70% up to 73%, which is good. And our ALS agencies that have offline medical direction have gone from almost 93% up to 96.5%. So that's good. This question pertains to performance measure 73, which is the percentage of vehicles that are the amount of vehicles that carry the nationally recommended equipment. So you can see from this that we are pretty much right at or slightly above the national average on our BLS and ALS agencies that carry the amount of pediatric equipment. And what this represents is, if you look at the Texas numbers, for BLS vehicles, so our BLS vehicles carry roughly 90% of the recommended equipment, and our ALS vehicles carry roughly 96% of the recommended equipment. So that's good. Now, as far as the least carried pieces of equipment on our vehicles, as far as BLS transporting vehicles are concerned, and we kind of rank these in order of importance or what EMS for Children feels are important. Only 75% of our BLS vehicles are carrying a neonatal size mask for the ambu bags. And that's important because if you receive a call for an imminent delivery on the side of the highway and you arrive and that baby isn't breathing, how are you going to ventilate them? Because I, for one, ain't doing mouth-to-mouth on a newborn because that's just kind of gross. Just saying. The next thing on the list is suction catheters in the various sizes, then nasal airways in the various sizes, and pulse oximeter with pediatric probes. This is for our BLS vehicles. ALS vehicles, same thing. Only 79% of our ALS vehicles are carrying the neonatal size mask for our AMBU bags. For those departments that include intubation as part of their scope of practice, 80% of them are carrying the smaller 2.5 size ET tubes, and almost 86% are carrying the smaller 3.5 millimeter size. Then we also have the nasal airways in those assorted sizes. So the most common reason for not carrying the recommended equipment that was listed in 2011 and in 2014 was that the state does not require it. So I think this has implications as we look at the Rule 157 revisions. That the EMS for Children program would advocate that you keep in mind that neonatal size equipment be included in the rule to ensure that necessary equipment for our most vulnerable population is available on all of our ambulances. So finally, I'd just like to thank all the agencies that participated in the assessment. I'd like to thank all the committees here at GTAC, including the EMS committee and the council for their help with this. So, y'all have any questions? Anybody else?
Anybody in the audience?
All right. Well, thank you.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Okay, and staying with the kids, pediatric interfacility transfer guidelines draft.
Yeah, tag me out. Thank you very much for staying with the kids.
Of course.
So one of the things that the pediatric committee has been working on over the last several months is a document called Consideration for Pediatric Consultation and Transfer. You notice I did not use the word guideline. This is a voluntary opportunity for people to have criteria based on a mechanism, physiologic criteria, anatomic criteria, and then other criteria to make a decision to transfer an ill or injured child to a higher level of care. Your group was represented by Justin on this task force that worked on this document. We did put it on the agenda and add it to the additional documents that were available on the GTAC website, so hopefully you've all seen it. Yes, no, yay,
Yes.
Good, that's good news. Our goal is to have each of the subcommittees that should have a voice in endorsement of this guideline, or I'm sorry, there I went and used the guideline word. This consideration for transfer is the EMS committee, obviously. So what we're looking for today is a vote of endorsement for the guideline, or God, I can't stop using that word. The proposal, the document. If you have questions, I'd be happy to answer them. I can tell you that this document did not make it on the agenda of all of the committees that we had asked for it to go to, so we don't anticipate taking it to GTAC on Friday because we don't have the endorsement of all the committees. The yesterday's committee, thank you so much because I'm having a little moment, Charles. The Air Medical Committee asked for at least a little more time to review it. So if you guys need that, that's fine. Otherwise, I'll answer questions.
Have you pushed this out to the various pediatric committees and the various RACs throughout the state as well?
We have not yet. We're looking for endorsement by the GTAC committees before we do that. We have shared it with several of them. I know my RAC has seen it. Justin's RAC has seen it. Are there other RACs that have shared it? Christine, who's on the task force? Thank you.
I know we've been talking about in the greater Houston area, not many people are familiar with it yet. So I'd really prefer to have, since it really doesn't matter whether it's passed today or not.
Correct.
It won't go to GTAC anyway yet. I'd rather see it on the next agenda for us personally.
Okay. So is it your recommendation that we share the draft with the RAC chairs so that they can vet it with their piece committees if necessary?
Publish it as far and wide as possible.
Okay.
That way we can come back with questions from our areas.
Okay.
A little better.
Sure.
Sally, I was gonna bring it up tonight, right there.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, that makes perfect sense. Any questions that I can answer for you about it today? I want to thank the work team members. I mentioned Justin and Christine. Dr. Kate Remick was also a member of the task force, Sam Vance, Julie Lewis, Debbie Boudreau, and Dr. Mitch Morber. So we had some rural and some urban input on this particular transfer consideration. So thanks for your time.
Thank y'all. We really appreciate all the work the committee did. It definitely will be a great tool for everyone to use. Okay. Next is the update on the draft revised language and injury prevention and control data reporting rules.
Correct. Madam Chair and committee members, the SHS has began reviewing the Texas Administrative Code, Title 25, Part 1, Chapter 103, which are the rules that govern the EMS and trauma registry system. I provided the Chairman Waite the proposed rules, in which we are in the process right now of collecting informal written comments from various stakeholders. Just to give a little review, the EMS section of Chapter 103, so Rule 103.5, basically it clears up a lot of the language that was written in there, such as how data should be submitted, what data should be submitted, where should it be submitted to. And so we're looking to collect that informal feedback from this committee.
Is there somewhere where that's posted where all the stakeholders can see it?
No, not
yet.
Not right now.
Okay. Oh. Dudley just sent us the email with it. So I don't think anyone, none of us have seen it.
Correct. And so this
So-
was just to make it known
Okay.
To the committee that this information has been provided for you. And if you could provide my program back with the informal feedback, it would be greatly appreciated as we move forward and reviewing these rules that govern the registry.
Okay. If committee's good with it, we can all look at it and send our stuff to Dudley and let Dudley send one email then to y'all on the feedback from the committee as a whole. Does that work?
What's the timeline on it? When do you need the feedback by?
Ideally, the feedback would be given back to us by the August GTAC meeting.
So we can have it on the agenda and make it
We
official.
can do that.
Thank you.
I've seen a draft on this, and this is an earth-shattering information. So don't everybody get all jumpy about it. I think it's just a lot of cleanup going on at this time.
Okay.
I will, since we are talking data, let me just do the commercial part here that January 1st, 2016, we are no longer accepting the affidavits for data. So we've notified everybody with a letter once. We're going to be coming out with a second letter, and we're working through the RACs and everybody to make sure we make that deadline. But if you're not submitting data come January 1st, it could affect your LPGs as well as your license. So I just want to keep reminding people that deadline's coming. We've gave a year and a half notice on this, so it shouldn't be a surprise. But, somebody will come back to us and say, well, I didn't know that.
No, they don't do that. Never. Okay. Okay, that's now up to y'all for a report on the National Rural EMS Conference in Cheyenne. I've seen pictures. We're not sharing those.
Yeah, I hope you're not sharing those pictures.
We're not sharing the pictures.
Well, let me start it off for just a second. Justin's got a whole lot more detail-oriented material. But some things that stuck out in my mind was the community paramedic program, the advanced practice paramedic. That was on the tips of everybody's tongue. And I'd like to recommend to the state of Texas to take the lead in that. There's several colleges out there already teaching courses in that. But if we don't get some standardization from the state at the state level, we're never going to get the payer sources out there to pay for that. So somebody's got to take the ball and roll with it. I know we talk about things here in GTAC. I know the ball rolls real slow. But some things are going to have to speed up a little bit, or we're going to be way behind by the time it hits. The national standard is it's already happening in places. They're already training EMTs and advanced EMTs to go out and do some of those things. It's not just at the paramedic level. Rural and frontier areas up in some of those other states are utilizing the resources they have. So I would challenge the state, Joe and your bunch, to take the lead. Somebody's got to get some standards out there, or else we're going to have College A teaching this course and College B teaching this course, and nobody's going to be on the same page, and we're all going to be doing a different thing, and it's not going to be productive for anybody. Some other things they talked about up there that really stuck out in my mind for the volunteer EMS services: are you a club or are you a business? Which one are you? If you're a club, it's just a bunch of people getting together. You have no teeth. You have no way to enhance patient care. Sure, there's a lot of volunteer organizations out there that do excellent patient care. There's no doubt about that. But what happens when your best friend needs a little training or whatever on a particular call? Now, if we're a club, we probably don't put a lot of weight in that, and it's hard to move forward with that. So I would challenge you to look at yours if that's what it is. Are you a club or are you a business? Because nowadays, EMS has to be operated like a business. Regardless, you have to be funded. You have to have some money somewhere coming in, and you have to be professional when we do it. At the end of the day, I think we would like to see patient care at the best level possible for your area. But with that means we have to have some training, and some people have to get their feelings hurt at times. I hate that way, but it's just inevitable, and it's going to happen. But they talked about that, and there was a lot of speakers up there that promoted different ways to fund it. They actually put a dollar figure at a national level on a volunteer. One, they said it took 12 volunteers to staff a 24-hour truck, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. 12 volunteers to do that one truck. Then they said if they volunteer, that would be equivalent to $23.07 an hour, and it would cost you, if you had to pay for it, $470,000. And I can't read that. $474,186 for one truck, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We're doing it with volunteers, but there's still a dollar figure involved. Even though we're not paying those volunteers, if they weren't here and your area opted to do that, you still had to have that. They challenged everybody to get the funding for that, however that is, whether that's a county-based or whether that is a hospital district-based or whether that's a private service, but they challenged everybody, put a dollar figure on your volunteers. If you don't do that, you're not doing yourself justice at the end of the day.
So the conference was this was the first annual conference of this sort. It was well attended. There was about 175, 200 people, and we had people from not only states, state trauma directors, state EMS directors. We had National Highway Transportation Safety directors from Washington, D.C. We had some legislative updates, a lot of rural health offices. We learned about, in South Dakota and North Dakota, they have simulation vehicles that drive out and give the education to the hospitals and the EMS providers, and it's funded through a foundation, and there is no charge for that, and it's operated through the state colleges. That was a little, that was a concept that we see a little bit of, but didn't realize how it worked until we got the opportunity to visit with them. It gave Eddie and I the opportunity to come home, or on the way home try to think about what benefit does it lie for Texas. We have rural areas, we have frontier areas. There's going to be conversations in the future about are they going to have this again? Just so happens our current state EMS director, Joe, happens to sit on the board that kind of makes that decision. We've discussed with Joe about, can we get this to Texas? Can we get the opportunity to have this in Texas? Because the part that we got to see is, like Eddie said, the community paramedicine incorporated with critical access hospitals and how they share those services across the base. And they've got services that are only running 200 and 300 and 400 calls a year, but they're utilizing the community paramedicine component of that within their organization. Now, they get some other funding opportunities because of critical access, and their ambulance services get critical access reimbursement as well. So I hope as we move forward, and we've got all these presentations, and we didn't know which one to give, and we had about 14, 15, 18 different presentations that they gave us. Like Eddie said, that they believe that a volunteer is a subsidy. Put a value on that subsidy. Find a way to fund it if you don't have it. I know that we're losing agencies in rural areas at an alarming rate. And they are too. They're creative in how they're trying to fill those holes, and right now it's through community paramedicine. But they're using not only paramedics, but they're using basics. They're using advanced EMTs in that program as well, and I think that's what Texas is going to have to look at too. Granted, that's going to take some time. So we hope, after discussions with Joe and Jane and Colin and some of the other rural RACs, and that we can bring some information back to Texas and try to find a way to get it out in some type of conference or summit or something in 6 months to a year.
Anybody have any questions? I not know was there. Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate that, guys. Okay, new EMS regulatory survey tool and site visit process. We brought this up a little bit at the February GTAC meeting of the EMS committee because there's been some concerns and on how these site surveys are being done, and people not understanding exactly what they're looking at. And so we brought it back up because there were some people who, even after the February committee, said, well, yeah, we've had some issues, but didn't really say anything. So we wanted to kind of give everybody a chance to if they still had concerns, to voice them. But before we open it up, Joe, you said you have something you wanted to share.
Sure. So you all know that we heard the message in February, and if you saw the newsletter in April, I believe it was, there was great detail on the whole survey process, some helpful tools for providers explaining what we're doing. I think the one surprise to a lot of people, this has been going on for years. I mean, it's not a new thing that we've done. It's just the way we've been doing it. But if you haven't gone to our newsletter and seen the document and see what we have in place now, please go review it, because I think it clarifies a lot of the questions and helps people with the process. Today I gave you, one of the things all our surveyors have heard is, what's a QA plan? And there's been a lot of question, what does that look like? So the managers and staff put together a little 3-page document. It's called the Quality Assurance Plan Development Tool. It is just that. I wanted to share with this committee to see if there's something that we missed that we should include in it or shouldn't include in it. But it's the refrigerator. It has everything in there. Stuff that you should be considering when you're developing a QA plan within your own organization. So I didn't want to, this time, we didn't want to make sure this goes out and then everyone's wondering where this came from. We're going to try a different approach. Share it with you. We'll share it with the medical committee later today. And then give us your feedback. Give your feedback to me. I'll pass it on to the managers. And then see if we missed something here or something that doesn't make any sense or whatever the case. The more eyes that look at it, the better off the document will be. And then it's just a resource tool for people to use or not use. It'll go out there. So I am under the belief we have answered the questions about the survey, and I don't know if there's anything else we need to do, or if anyone in the audience has anything they want to add to it. We've done a lot of work over the last 3 months on this topic, and hopefully we put some people at ease a little bit on it.
Can I ask a question?
Sure you can.
Sorry, I have to find my microphone here. So my understanding is with the compliance survey is that for this 3-year cycle or so, I believe y'all said that you're going to focus on QA plan. Next cycle, it might be something different. Is that true? Like this is just what we're working on now, or?
Well, this document truly came because people were asking us, what are you looking for in a QA plan? So in some areas, people got it. So we're going to look at the whole overall patient care, the operation of the organization. So maybe QA is not an issue in your organization, PCRs are an issue, or are we leaving the reports at the hospital, or other issues. So we want to get to the point where we're looking at the overall operation and making suggestions on how we can make it better.
And from this detailed QA plan that you guys want, do you have, not that I want to copy someone's, but do you have any, hey, this, you ought to go talk to Chief Cunningham, or you ought to talk to, like, did anyone have it right off the bat? Just because when I think of QA, I think of patient care and follow-up, and this plan is obviously much more detailed than just that.
So
Do you have anyone I can go?
who would you say is the best? Is there anybody?
We're looking at each organization. It's all what your service is doing.
Okay.
What you're telling us. Yeah.
So maybe that's the question that I have. Who's quantifying those answers? When you get this response back and you're looking at every service individually on this survey and what you're doing, and you're saying that there's really not a model, that we're looking at on an individual basis. Who's making the determination that this, what they wrote down and submitted to you, is appropriate?
So I would hope that our survey, as well as the organization, will come to an agreement that says, hey, we're really not looking at, you're not looking at X, and come to some kind of an agreement on is there a hole or isn't there a hole. It's your QA plan. The law requires you to have a QA plan. We just want to make it better for you and your organization. So we're going to come in and read it, you're going to read it, and then we're going to have dialogue and hopefully make it better, or maybe it meets all the needs that you have.
So, Joe, is that your office or is that Derek's office? Is that coming from the managers on, and that's maybe the questions we're getting, is if when they're reading this and they're supplying the answers, we're giving it to regulatory, and so we have dialogue. Who are we going to be having dialogue with, and how is that going to work?
Hi, Derek Jakovich with the SHS. The QA plan is part of the overall provider requirements that are referenced in that survey tool that we've recently put out. The QA plan is your plan. It should be tailored to your organization, what you're doing. We want to look at the plan you developed, and then are you following that plan? Have you implemented it? Are you doing what you said you're going to be doing? The QA plan should be proactive. It should identify if you have issues, and then what are the mechanisms you put in place to fix those issues, and did your corrections work? And it's an ongoing cycle for a good QA plan to be effective. So when we sit down and look at that, that's what we're going to want to hear from you. What's your plan? Are you following through and doing what it said? Is it working? Have you made changes so that it is effective? That's the type of thing we'll be looking at. There's not necessarily any right or wrong. It's what you said you're going to be implementing, and are you following it, if that makes sense.
Yes, I get that. I mean, that makes sense. So, I mean, some of these agencies are going to be very non-descriptive and broad, just like the rule states, is that, we're trying the best to comply with the rule, and we've got these processes in place. Number two, the medical directors have got to be involved with this. And the questions is in maybe the dialogue, not so much with the AOR, but when you have those questions, is the medical director brought into this, and is that communication happening when y'all start these processes?
Well, when you get a chance to look at that draft we gave you, those are some of the questions we've posed that we think you should have that discussion internally. The responsibilities of your administrator. Is the medical director involved as you develop that plan and as it's implemented? Those are the kind of discussions. All the questions in there are prompts to you. Hey, did we look at this? Did we think about this? And then did you follow through once you finally have a living, breathing plan?
Are there some most common deficiencies that you're seeing in the QA plans as y'all have gone around and done these?
Well, there's the certain minimums that the plan is supposed to address. I know from the managers, QA plan is a deficiency we're seeing pretty frequently now. And so that's why we put this document out there to hopefully help folks develop good, effective plans that will help you, provide better service.
I know we do it with CAMES and CAS, but is there a way that we can check a box and let our QA plan or whatever it is be added as a Texas best practices? That would be an example for services that don't have anything. They're trying to start, and there's some that are already out there. Once again, not recreating the wheel.
I mean, we're not going to tell you exactly what to do, except that your plan's supposed to address certain areas. We want to give you the flexibility for you to come up with what works best for you. And so if you want to talk to your other providers, I mean, I imagine a lot of folks already have some good plans out there. If they're willing to share, what they do, how they do it, and then you come up with your plan that works for you, and then you're following it. That's the big issue.
Sure, yeah, but once again, you guys are the ones that are judging it, per se.
So we're going to hold you accountable to what you came up with, what you're telling us you're going to do.
So if I understand your question, you want to make your plan available to anyone in Texas if they want to use it?
Yeah.
As a model. So my recommendation would be is you make it available to the committee, you add it to your minutes, and then we can direct people to the committee's minutes, and there's the document if they want to see it.
So
that's the easiest way to do it. We're not
Best practice.
endorsing it, but you can offer it to your committee, make it part of the minutes.
So, is there a process for determining whether the plan passes or fails? And if so, who's the expertise matter on determining whether they pass or fail?
That's going to be part of the inspection when we're on site.
Okay, so who is
I mean,
that?
you're going to give us your plan. We're going to look at it. Are you doing everything you said you were going to? Part of the questions you'll see in the draft are maybe the goals your plan has. Is it measurable? How are you going to measure it? As far as its effectiveness, is it doing what it's supposed to do? If you have a specific problem, you should come up with specific actions to correct it, and then you follow up and evaluate, did it fix the problem or not? And it's that cycle, whatever issues you're dealing with.
I'm still back to the same
I mean,
question. Maybe I'm hard-headed, maybe I'm not. A lot of our people who are going to be judging these plans aren't
compliance
currently.
staff, our compliance staff are going to be the ones looking at it. Our EMS field staff are going to be looking at your plan as part of the overall survey process. If we have questions during that time, we will ask you, hey, what about this? Your plan says you're doing this. Do you have the documentation to back it up to show that you have in fact done it?
It would appear to me from what you're saying is you're going to ask if they're doing it. They're going to say this is what we're doing and this is how we're doing it, and you're just going to ensure that they're following their own process, not necessarily qualifying is it working or not. But you say you're doing it this way. Now show me that you're doing it. Is that what I'm understanding you to say?
That's basically it. I mean, the QA is internally you identify issues you have, and then you come up with a mechanism to solve those issues. And you monitor it, you track it. Did it work?
So, the results are up for interpretation by the agency on their own merit, whether it's working or not, and y'all are going to take.
The plan has to address those certain components. They're in the rules. But beyond that, we need to look at your plan. Did you implement it? Did you revise it as needed throughout the year? It's an ongoing process. So it's mainly, did you do what you said you're going to do? And did you document it?
I think that some of them might lead people to be maybe perhaps vague, because if I'm kind of vague, like preventative maintenance, take it to the shop every this many miles, and then if it's broken, we take it to the shop. That's going to be harder for someone to say you're not following it than if I really, detailed what goes to which shop and what. So I think that's just, my concern is that on some of this, I'd rather keep whatever I'm submitting to you guys as my QA plan vaguer, so that maybe there's less chance of problems arising. But I think our CCMP friend has some advice for us. So,
So there is a model to follow, and it is CCMP.
What's your
it was
name?
Alan Johnson.
And you're from?
Well, today I'm from Austin, Texas. I work for ESO Solutions. Spent 15 years with Montgomery County Hospital District before going to the dark side of
Just
the
for
hospital world.
Thank you.
There you go. So CCMP was designed to address this, and I certainly understand the trepidation of someone from the state's going to come in and they alone are going to decide if I'm following my process. And one of the nice things about trauma designation and really any of the other disease-specific certifications in the hospital, as well as what we looked at in CCMP, would be there'd be a team there of at least 2 people, someone from the state and a peer administrator who has a plan, who has a plan in place and understands what you're going through, that could come in and look at what you're doing, and together they make a recommendation of whether you're following it or not. And if it's a not, then there would be an evaluation of, are you at least close, moving in the right direction, therefore keep going, and with some facilitated regulation, technical assistance on how to do better, versus you have a plan and you've never touched it. In fact, no one in your organization even knows it exists, and therefore we need to do something a little more drastic, right? So, I mean, the processes are there. They can work very, very effectively, but it does take a team, and I think these guys understand there needs to be some check and balance here to make sure that it's just not some guy coming out saying, no, you're not doing it. I do want to point out one other thing, and you alluded to it, Derek, in that there's a difference between being good and having a quality program. You can be good and not have a quality program and be good just by luck, right? Things just fall into place. Whereas you can have a well-structured quality improvement program that has found that you're not performing very well. And I would much rather have an organization that maybe is not performing where they want to be today, but they've got a well-structured plan in place to measure it, identify those issues, put remediation plans in place, and then go remeasure that, than to have the guy that's just lucky that he's good. Because tomorrow he may not be lucky anymore and he won't know the difference.
Right. Good point.
Thank you. I think that one thing that you brought up there that I know has been a concern of some people on the committee also is the peer. And I know that we discussed some meeting about how we got to, when you get down to, like, who's the panel of, if you have concerns, if you have problems, you get called down to the board. And it's not a peer board. Like in nursing, there's a peer board. In some specialties, there's a peer board. And I guess one of my concerns is just, is someone who's administered a service before, who's judging, is it okay or not? Or that's...
Are you talking about, when you say the panel, do you mean if there's potentially down the road?
If it goes into
enforcement action
discipline, then we
taken?
go down to the board.
Well,
I
you know,
can't
the process we're implemented across the board for the surveys is we're on site. If we do find what we're labeling a deficiency, you would get a deficiency report and asked to respond back with a plan of correction on how you're going to address that deficiency. That's where we are right now. That's part of the discussion that was the overall survey process. That's for building that in to the process. So if there's problems with your QA plan, we would cite a deficiency, inform you, we're seeing a problem with this. We think you need to implement some type of corrective action to fix it down the road. Right now, we haven't taken any enforcement action. We're tied to these surveys.
Sure.
Down the road, if it's continuing to be a repeat deficiency, you're not addressing it at all, then I can see us going the enforcement route.
And we've talked about the board before is what but I understand we're not there yet with the QA plan stuff, but I guess some of it, like with all the surveys, is typically it's a peer and a regulatory person, and so I don't know how you do that in Texas, but I think that sometimes that's the concern, is are we being judged by a peer in a similar situation, or are we, you know, who is it that's deciding is it correct or is it adequate or not?
So if it goes down that route, which is way down the road for discipline action, the way that process works is that you know, you're working with the surveyor and everything's going well, and as long as you're working with it, no one's going to go down that discipline action. But if you get into discipline action, you get a notification of a notice of violation, and then we'll propose action, and then it comes before you have an informal meeting with the department. And at that meeting, it is compliance, enforcement, and the state EMS director. And legal sometimes if they're there. And then we had dialogue back and forth. And then you can either agree with the action being taken, you can ask for a change of the action or whatever, or you can say, I still disagree with you, and then you take it to SOA, to the more formal hearing process. But the hearing process is, it's more, and I'm sorry, I should have said licensure was in there also. That's another one of the groups that's there. It is, if anyone's been through the process, it is more of a peer review. The people in the room have experience in EMS and the law itself. So it's never a friendly position to be in because you're sitting across from us, but on the same token, I think it's a fair process.
Let me add to the surveyor or inspector, if they find a problem, they would have typically what we call an exit conference with you saying, these are our preliminary findings. They're going to go back to the office, look at the documentation they've collected from you, talk to their manager and saying, I think we have a deficiency here. I think it needs to be part of the report that goes to you. And then you would get that report and asking you for the plan of correction back.
And those managers are doing this consistently across the state because historically we know that by region there is different interpretations by manager, and that's been some concern. So as we move forward with this, there is commonality amongst the state and the managers that we're all interpreting it correctly. And if some of those questions that we have, these documents are great because we can take them back and now we have common things across Texas, because that's not what's been happening historically. We've had kind of a little bit of we can do this over here, but we can't do it over here, and we have to have individually sealed NPAs here and they can be in a bucket over here. I mean, we're looking for consistency as we go through this process too.
Our biggest challenge is to be consistent across the state. That's one of the single biggest challenges we have from the compliance perspective. So these managers are talking every day about cases and inspections. We have a process even before a case goes to the ERC. We actually, several managers get together and we talk about it. Is this a deficiency? And does it need to go to enforcement to make sure we feel it's solid from our perspective before it even moves forward?
Well, I do think this will be very helpful because I think, kind of like Heidi mentioned earlier, probably most of us, if you ask us the elements of a QA/QI plan, would not have included some of this. We wouldn't think about fleet maintenance or that kind of stuff when we think about just a QA. We focus more on patient care. So hopefully maybe this will
remember
clarify
the
for
rules
people.
are the minimum we want the QA plan to address, but you can certainly go beyond that. What works for your organization that you want to look at and be part of your plan?
Tammy, I just have to say, on the maintenance end of it, it's interesting in my 2 years, and it's almost 2 years that I've been here, come June, the EFs, the emergency funding projects, where engines blow up in ambulances, and one of the biggest, if anyone in this room has received those EFs, the biggest thing that I ask is, what's your maintenance plan? Because I've seen companies with 3-4 years in a row with blown engines. And I'm saying, how does that happen without having some kind of a maintenance plan? So I was pleased to see that in here because, you just can't sometimes jump in the vehicle and go all the time. And I know you all know that. But so that's some of the things that we're trying to, real world stuff, sometimes you got to tell people. Sometimes the obvious is not so obvious.
Yeah, and I think probably for some of us, I know myself and Garland, that, who have a fleet maintenance group that,
sure,
they call us on the phone, hey, come bring your rescue. We gotta, we get kind of spoiled by that. So that's why we don't think about it with QA plans. Anybody else have any questions, concerns they want to bring up? Anybody in the audience have anything else on this, on the surveys or inspections?
Is this survey going to be revised when we come out with the rule changes? Or is this the survey we're going to continue to use for provider relicensure? I mean, so the only question we're asking is as we update the rules and stuff.
Yeah, we'll make sure it's consistent.
And we can have a pre-copy of that so we can review it as an EMS committee and offer any input that we may have.
You're talking about the
The survey process and the application.
Right.
Yeah.
In the rules.
We'll update them to, we'll update to meet the standards of the laws at that time, and then, we'll just keep sharing that document back and forth with everybody. Now, I know you don't have a formal meeting now until sometime, but if you can just give us any input that you think, like within 30 days, to send it over to me, and then we'll see if we can fine tune his document. We're not going to be taking this to GTAC for blessing or anything like that. So we're just looking at this group to give us some input into the document.
Anybody else?
Can I comment?
Uh-huh.
Hi, Jennifer Gardner from NICTRAC, RACI. So what you guys are talking about is excellent. It's exactly what we need. I was asking people, is it the GTAC Council that drives performance improvement? Or is it the state that drives performance improvement, or is it us as the RACs? And I know that at our RAC, to keep all of our disparate committees aligned, we have to make sure that that System Performance Improvement Committee is that driver for change. And I think that for the last 4 years, there has been a tool that was designed to establish a benchmarking system for trauma and for EMS and for RACs. And I think this is an opportune time, Madam Chair, to present the fact that we once again need to request that a System Performance Committee be created to be that driver of change, to accelerate our progress in these things that we know are inevitable in the ways in which we are moving.
System Performance Committee falling under what?
System Performance Improvement Committee for GTAC.
Oh, as another subcommittee.
Right,
under
with all the
GTAC.
big data and what we need, there's a lot of alignment with the RACs and with the state of Texas and how we're analyzing data, and we're seeing progress there. But I think we need that Systems Performance Improvement Committee to take that charge and create that dashboard for the state of Texas where all of these QA deliverables and data elements, so forth and so on, roll up to that one committee to create that balanced scorecard picture of where the state of Texas is and where we need to be. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. You might want to not go too far. I think you're the next topic anyway. Anybody else before we close this topic?
Thanks, Derek.
Okay, at the last meeting, we discussed the issue with dropping off patient care reports, and Jennifer, who is just up here, talked about a great deal of work that they had been doing on trying to address this problem, and she's just kind of give us just a real quick update on where they're at.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Committee. So I'm Jennifer Gardner. I am the Clinical Informatics Manager for the North Central Texas Trauma Regional Advisory Council. My understanding is that the handoff of patient care reports to destination hospitals has been somewhat of a long-term dispute at the state level and the regional and the local level. Some people call it the 13-year itch. Because I believe it's been at least 13 years that y'all been having this discussion. It started to overwhelm our committee meetings, our zone meetings. I proactively called for a Plan, Do, Check, Act performance improvement project, and we had 44 regional participants that volunteered to be in this project. We did achieve over the 6-month project a blessing for that electronic EPCR handoff. We proposed enhancements to the DSH's custom questions. And we also standardized the EPCR handoff in our NICTRAC EMS plan. And we surveyed the region, and I'll show a PDCA infographic briefly. And our regional participants for this project, they requested a regional hospital hub for all EPCR access regardless of vendor. And then I also submitted the abstract of our project work to the Healthcare Information Management System Society, and it was selected for a poster session for the Nursing Informatics Symposium at HIMSS 15 in Chicago, where 43,000 attendees were there that week. If you look back to the EMS trauma news, it's all about the patient. It does refer back to that literature of best practices that was produced by the American College of Emergency Physicians. And it substantiates the value of that verbal handoff, and also that a medic can leave an electronic or a paper report at the destination hospital. We have instituted a module called Hospital Hub, which is a portal where destination hospitals can use one login to access EPCRs for hopefully one day any agency within our region. What we're seeing as benefits of that Hospital Hub portal is it's also decreasing the EMS fire workload for data submissions, first off to the regional registry, because it's an automatic submission to the regional registry. It's something they no longer have to think about. And also then, hopefully by July of 2015 is the targeted date when we will interface with the state. So that will take two hats off of our EMS fire in our region, so that their data is automatically going to the regional registry and also the state registry. It's also created a leaner workflow for trauma registrars. Some of these registrars in our project said they accessed anywhere from 5 to 17 different portals for EPCR vendors. And sometimes multiple times for each of those vendors for different agencies. This allows them to access the EPCRs from every agency with one login. We've also got a standardized form based on NMSIS 3 data elements, version 3 data elements, that gives the capacity for hospitals to provide manual feedback of patient outcomes to EMS. We're also realizing an exchange of EPCRs more real time and improved communication across the healthcare continuum, because its goal is to eliminate that call back from that destination hospital asking why they never received a patient care report. And the current project challenges that I'm coming up against right now are really negotiating decreased relay times of those EPCRs from those vendors. And that API, it's an application program interface. It's just basically an interface. It's the same reason why our smartphones receive our work email. That's basically what we're talking about there. Also, the timeliness of the outcome feedback to EMS. I'm getting a lot of kickback right now from destination hospitals that their legal department has an issue with them providing feedback to the EMS. I went to the state and requested help and was given a state statute that identifies that it is legal for them to actually provide that feedback back to the medics. And I know there's a federal document that's coming to me soon. And then also the fact that one of my challenges is instituting a health data exchange or a gateway or a health information exchange. We're hearing a lot of those terms thrown around right now with HL7. It's definitely something I think we need to focus on. The Texas Health Information Exchange currently has 5 hospitals live out of 500 plus hospitals. So it's definitely something we need to think about, and I think through this project we're seeing the value of that. For instance, right now I currently have 122 EMS fire agencies that submit to my regional registry and about 80 hospitals. By mid to late May 2015, those hospital submissions will go and interface with DSH's Maven registry. We're looking at July for the EMS side. But at the same time as those 122, or currently 33 EMS agencies are interfacing with my regional registry, that second communication is also being broadcasted into our E-Track system, our emergency preparedness system there on the right. And that is where the hospital hub module lives. That's where hospitals can access those EPCR reports. Currently, we have Hospital Hub open to 66 NICTRAC hospitals. Live on Hospital Hub today is Grapevine Fire Department, Cook County EMS, Sherman Fire Department, Richardson Fire Department, Possum Kingdom Lake, Care Flight Ground, most of our ESO agencies, and our AMR agencies. In the queue to go live are the Intermedics agencies, Care Flight Air, MedStar, and then 2 Sancio agencies, Cedar Hill and Acadian, as well as Louisville. So our goal from this, when we started 3.5 months ago, really opening Hospital Hub up to the region, when the PDCA participants said, no, we want what Grapevine Fire Department's been doing with Baylor Grapevine. We want that, one login. And the bonus was that we could start to really relay that EMS feedback outcome back to EMS, which is vital. Currently today, we're at 27%. So it's been accelerated growth to configure this and get this live and get this access out there for our region. And I think it's because it's what's needed, right? We need that communication to the destination hospital, and we need that feedback back to EMS. So I think people see the value in it. Some of our times listed on the right from the vendors are due to that application program interface. And so we're looking into some different data exchange technologies that could really drive those times down, because we know we need it real time. Here's that Texas statute, Chapter 773, Emergency Medical Services. 773.092, exceptions to the confidentiality or privilege in court or administrative proceedings exist when, number 6, other emergency communication and records that are confidential under this section may be disclosed to 6, other emergency medical services personnel, other physicians, and other personnel under the direction of a physician who are participating in the diagnosis, evaluation, or treatment of a patient. We know that the communication and the education piece with that outcome back to EMS is vital. We talked about it yesterday in the stroke committee. If we cannot base our data analysis on just primary and secondary symptoms, and we can really tie back that diagnosis, we not only have more accurate data, but we also have that education piece back to medics when they got it right. That was awesome. You called it right. It was a STEMI. That's awesome. You called it right. It was a stroke. Or no, we were way off base on this. This was an article actually during mid-stride of our project. Hospital Hub is really a virtual dashboard, a virtual whiteboard in the emergency department or trauma department. And this came out in Modern Healthcare, and it was talking about the Office of the National Coordinator for Health Information Technology, who had just started 4 project work groups to start this virtual intake clipboard for physicians' offices. So for all of you who have children or parents that you take care of all the time, and you have to fill out monstrous amounts of paperwork for every doctor's office that you go to, this is actually an application that will be as simple as getting a Starbucks coffee, where your smartphone can be scanned. For those of you who are still in the resistance and do not have a smartphone, you will have a card like a driver's license, like you see in Canada now for universal health care, that can also be scanned. But basically, it will eliminate that waste in our system of all that paperwork that's still there, right? So this movement towards this is something we want, right? I think we all enjoy our patient portal access, our ease to records and ease to transfer of information. So this is just another way in which we're improving that communication and learning to work better together and breaking down some of those barriers. So I think that's all I have for you today. I don't know if you have any questions for me.
I have a question.
Sure.
When you start talking about portals and you start talking about getting feedback to the EMS agencies in real time and everything, is there any talk or is there any studies going on to where the EMS agency can can access that portal on the front side and go ahead and gain all that patient information and all the patient history on the
Right.
front side, which would assist in the patient care to the hospital?
Oh, You mean
Oh, that
before
was
they
brought up
send-
in the National Rural EMS Conference up in Wyoming, that they were doing that in some other states. That's why I was wondering.
Possibly, are you pointing to previous medical history?
Yes.
Yeah, of course. There are studies out there that are doing that. And that's when we're starting to talk about moving more towards that health data exchange and that health information exchange. Heidi, you remember in the project, we talked about, guys, I said, guys, this is a closed solution. This is a middleware. This is going to take us to this point. It's going to take a lot of our EMS agencies out of the dark ages, and it's going to get us to a regional standard. But we're going to see a lot of the larger EMS agencies go ahead and launch to that HDE. We already have a good example of that with some of the HCA agencies. They're already launching to that data exchange where they're having that real time of relay, bi-directional relay of discrete information. So they have access to that.
I agree that there's a lot of those people doing that with the healthcare data exchanges, but it's all on the backside and on the feedback that, yes, I called that call right. Yes, I did that right. I'm talking about on the front side where I'm going to the hospital with Justin, and I type in his name and his information, and I pull up all of Justin's medical history right now.
Yeah, there's definitely people that are doing that, right? More patient-centric health information exchange. Yeah, I can provide some documentation and some literature for you guys to review on that.
And I believe that's one of the benefits of an integrated healthcare system, so that you have the history on that patient before you show up. And I still think we're in the early stages of the full development of it, but it's coming. There's no doubt about it. You're going to know everything about. You're going to know as much as the hospital and the doctors know as we keep building out these systems.
And we're going to need to with that accountable care payment structure.
I applaud you for your strong work. It's absolutely fabulous. And
Thank
I know
you.
it's a lot of hard work, but I think it's great. And we desperately need outcomes, and we desperately need a health information exchange that works. And so thank you for considering those points as well.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
And I do have that federal document, Justin. I do have that federal document that you talked about. If you'd like for me to share it, I shared it with Rick.
Thank you, Justin. You're a good man. I don't believe what they say.
And we don't believe he's a good man, no.
I have one more question for Joe on this subject. It's a little bit different, but it is on this rule. I'm hearing in our region they're concerned about 157.11.9D, where it says, if in response pending status. We have a lot of our providers that when they go to a hospital, they're 25 minutes to an hour or more away from their area. And they feel like if they don't have a call holding, that they're not response pending. I tend to disagree with that after we had some conversations at some of our meeting, that they need to deliver the short report and get back to their service area. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, that is the biggest misunderstanding in the system.
Yes, sir.
There's the short report and the full report, and the full report comes in within 24 hours or one business day. Some organizations you can leave the full report, but in large majority of times you go back and you do that later. Where we're putting all our emphasis is that short report to ensure that when the doctor and nurses come in and start caring for that patient, they have the latest information and they know what we did. And that's what we're looking at. They leave when we drop the patient off.
That's what I thought. We've just had
Yep.
this question a lot in our region. I just wanted you to clear it up. Thank you.
Yeah, that is an ongoing issue. People keep blending the two together, and we're
Yes.
not saying you have to have the full report there before you leave.
And you don't see that changing with any
No.
of the rule changes. Thank you.
No.
Okay, thank you very much, Jennifer, appreciate it. Okay, real quick update on local project grants.
I thought there was somebody to give one.
No.
So they're moving.
You.
They're moving really. People have gotten contract notifications. There's 26 contracts in the mailing status. 11 have been received at PCS. 24 are still waiting for PCS manager's approval. So we've made it through this year, and next year's has already started. So hopefully we cut the road. It's a new process. We cut the road, and it'll be easier.
Who should people contact? They have seen their name on the list that they are receiving a local projects grant. They've never received anything in the mail. They found a name of a new person that they didn't know, but they've emailed them. They've called. They still have heard nothing back. who should they contact?
So they've called the number and a name and no response. See me
None.
afterwards, and
Thank you.
and we'll get
Okay.
on that for you.
Okay.
Yeah, if you have that problem, contact the office, contact me or Indra or whatever, and we'll work it from our side.
Thank you.
Okay. And is there any kind of plan for those who can't meet the deadline because of the delay?
So part of this has been what we call negotiations. We've called them up and talked to them and said, okay, I know the deadline's short because it's August 31st. Are you going to be able to meet them? And I just want to say thank you for everyone has been fantastic. People are meeting the deadlines. There were a couple that could not, and we were able to work some workarounds. So under that negotiation part, they've been working that all out.
Okay. Great. Okay, we'll go real quick here to just general public comment.
So, Madam Chair, I have just 4 items I would just like to raise quickly. I don't see Brenda from TTAB, but last week, the SHS in conjunction with TTAB held the first EMS data management course, and it was well attended. We had speakers from throughout the state. We had the NEMSIS TAC director, Karen Jacobson, come in and talk about the data dictionary. I had my staff there talk about the operations of the registry, and it was well attended. This goes back to the EMS representatives that we talked about. We had a fair number of them attend. I believe it was 19 of the different RACs were represented, in which DSHS provided funds for them to attend. In addition, just to give a quick update on where we are with NEMSIS V3, currently the state system is waiting for NEMSIS to break our system. We've gone through this process a couple times back and forth, but if they're unable to break our system now, we will then become certified. And so it's any day now that we're waiting to hear from them. Also, we had a request from stakeholders to put together a friendly user guide on the registry. That document has been completed. It is now on the DSHS injury website. It's 185 pages long, a lot of screenshots, and it talks about the ins and outs of the registry. And so a lot of questions that my staff gets regarding the registry can be addressed by this document. So for any of those who integrate or interface with the registry, this is a great document to hold. And the last comment, Madam Chair, if we could be placed on the agenda for August to discuss, now that the state is moving towards NEMSIS version 3, talk about the impact of having 2 different data standards open, our current legacy system and the new V3 standard, to talk about the transition of closing one out and only accepting records based on one standard. Thank you.
I have something real quick, Tammy. I understand that 157 item L addresses subscription and membership programs. I also understand that Rotor Wing is supposed to follow 157.11, but because of FAA rules, that doesn't apply to them. I personally am still having problems in my area. I received a letter from a company in the mail offering a membership or subscription to me for an air medical provider that's 150 miles or more away from me that I would never use in my area. So I know we can't do anything about it, but I have learned that there is a complaint process through the DOT, and I just wondered if anybody out there is still having those problems in your area. Is it just me? Some people are having problems.
And just know, so take a look at the draft rules. I don't have the exact wording. There is something in there. If you are mailing a subscription plan into an area that you do not cover, you have to notify them. I don't know if it'll make it through the process, but and that's not the exact language, but there's some language we put in there.
In L, it says you must obtain written authorization from the county or the mayor, but the FAA exempts the air medical providers from that.
Yeah, so we're, yep.
Okay.
So we'll see if the rule makes it through or not.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, my name is Heather McGlasson. I'm the Regional Director of Membership Sales for Air Medical Group Holdings, which includes AirEvac, MedTrans, EagleMed, and REACH. we're all over the state. We did actually take care of your particular county. Before I received your complaint, we had actually identified a number of counties within the state that did not have a large number of flights or a large penetration rate for membership purposes. So I have deleted those from our mailing list. There were 24 counties that I removed. So we are taking steps to address that issue and not market to areas where we don't have a lot of members currently.
And Heather, thank you very much for that, but I think it's broader.
Right.
Yeah.
I just wanted to let you all know that I am proactively working on that from my company's perspective.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Craig Manifold, EMS Medical Director from San Antonio area. If we're off the 157 subject, but back into what Jennifer talked about in the sharing of hospital outcomes, she was much more eloquent than what I will be in discussing this issue, and I think she did a very nice job of presenting it. But it's a shame to me when I can go to Wichita, Kansas, and I can see an EMS system that can have that information auto-populated in their PCR of patient history, patient medications as they're en route to the scene, and we're still having problems in Texas getting information from a hospital setting. And I think it's obviously the focal point is in the legal process. Is what my experience has been in trying to get those agreements in place from individual agencies or through the RACs or not. I would suggest if we look at the tea leaves, if we think there's activity and this will be solved in the next year or so, then we're probably on a good path. But if we don't think that's happened, and I think we've been on this path for a long time, I don't know if there's the opportunity for DSHs or the state to provide a legal opinion so that EMS agencies could take to their hospital and say this is an acceptable practice that you provide the outcomes back to the EMS agency and is actually required. So again, there's some probably dynamics and process to be able to make something like that happen. But I think that may be beneficial to the EMS agency to take to their hospital and give them a little ammunition. But I also think on a statewide perspective, we've been behind the 8 ball on a lot of the HIE exchanges, and we're doing better, but that's where a lot of other states and the EMS agencies that I've been exposed to elsewhere have made their best inroads, is integration into the local HIE exchanges to be able to get that information back. But really we're stagnant if we're not able to look back at patient outcomes and looking at our research and our data. It really doesn't do us much benefit to only look at our primary call types and things like that. So I applaud and encourage your work and would encourage you to continue to move forward with this process. And it's slow moving and difficult with many layers, but truly getting the hospital to understand that they need to exchange that information with us is critical for us. So, and I'm happy to participate in any things that we have to be able to make that move forward, as I'm sure all of the EMS medical directors. We feel this is a major frustration for our components as well. So thank you very much.
And Doc, that was one of the presentations we had at Wyoming, was the FirstNet.gov initiative that talked about the front end side of that and what they're doing. We looked over that document, had some presentations, and everybody go to www.firstnet.gov and look at that. When you look at the panel and what they're trying to do, we didn't see very many representatives from Texas on the steering committees or anything like that, but we hope that changes. But that's some of where that's coming from on the front end, and auto-populating prior to the scene and stuff is, that's a great website to look at. It's got about $7 billion of initiative in it.
Thank you. Okay, any other general public comment? Everybody's going, no, we're hungry, stop. Anything, I got discussing the different systems for NEMSIS 3 for agenda items for next meeting. Any other agenda items?
The children,
Oh, the interface, yeah. Anything else? Hit it.